Welcome. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on a pretty shocking system of land fraud. Now, this isn't about some random, isolated crime. We are talking about a highly organized, almost factory-like process for illegally taking tribal land. It's a system with devastating consequences, so let's get right into it.
So, the big question we're really digging into is this. Are these just a bunch of unrelated incidents, or are there organized networks? Groups of lawyers, agents, and officials, all working together to make this happen, because the evidence really suggests that when you see the same patterns repeating over and over, that's rarely an accident.
And that observation brings us to this core idea, an entire ecosystem of fraud. So I want you to forget the idea of some lone wolf criminal. We're looking at a network, a system, where every single player has a very specific, repeatable role in a much, much bigger operation.
And you can actually map this whole thing out as a kind of four-stage pipeline. It all starts on the ground, finding the sellers. Then it moves into the back offices, where the paperwork gets, smoothed over. Then the money comes in from the outside to fund it. And finally, it's all wrapped up with official-looking legal documents. Let's break down who does what.
Okay, first up, you've got the broker. This is your person on the ground. They're the ones who find vulnerable tribal landowners, maybe someone in debt or in need of cash, and they're the ones who get the whole process started. They are the entry point to this entire pipeline.
Next, and this role is absolutely crucial, you have the insider. This is a corrupt official inside the system. They're the ones who, grease the wheels. They'll push through a forged certificate or fake paperwork, giving the whole illegal deal a fake but official-looking seal of approval. Without them, the whole thing grinds to a halt.
Of course, this entire system needs fuel, and that fuel is money. That's where the financier comes into play. These are outside buyers with deep pockets. They provide the capital that's needed to actually buy the land, and in doing so, they're basically bankrolling the entire fraudulent operation from start to finish. And finally, to wrap it all up with a nice legal-looking bow, you have the legal handler. This might be a lawyer or maybe just a deed writer who uses the same templates over and over again to create all the fraudulent documents. This standardization is key. It makes everything look consistent and above board, helping the whole scheme fly under the radar. So you might be wondering, how in the world do you uncover a system that's this sophisticated? Well, it turns out that an organized process like this always leaves behind fingerprints. There are very specific telltale signs that point directly to a coordinated network at play.
And these signs really fall into three main buckets of evidence. Investigators are looking for weird patterns in the data, they're looking for shortcuts in the official process, and they're looking for revealing clues in the paperwork itself. Let's take a quick look at each one of these.
All right, take a look at this. This chart shows a massive red flag. When investigators see a huge, abnormal spike in land registrations by non-tribal buyers in one specific area, way above the state average, that's a giant statistical tell. It screams that something systemic is going on there.
Then you've got the procedural evidence. This is when you find official inquiries just being rubber-stamped. What does that mean? It means mandatory checks, the verifications that are supposed to happen, are just skipped. They're deliberately bypassed. Approvals are given without any real investigation, which is a clear sign an insider is smoothing the path.
And this quote right here, this is brilliant. It illustrates that third type of evidence, the documentary trail. When investigators find the exact same templates for affidavits or permission forms being used again and again in totally unrelated cases, well, that's the smoking gun. It points directly to one centralized source creating all the fraudulent paperwork. That's our legal handler at work.
Now, it's really important to get this. These aren't just theories or some investigator's hunch. This systemic problem, it's actually well documented in official government reports at both the state and the national level. The system's flaws are pretty much hiding in plain sight. For example, you have high-level national reports like from the Zaxxit Committee and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. They point directly to things like weak law enforcement and the very real danger of collusion between officials and these outside interests. And it's not just at the top. State audit reports often flag the exact vulnerabilities that let this fraud happen, things like terrible verification procedures and old, fragmented, non-digital records that are just way too easy to mess with. Okay, so knowing the problem is this big and this systemic, what can actually be done? Well, the good news is the existing legal framework already has the tools we need to go after every single person in this criminal ecosystem.
This table lays it out perfectly. Just think back to our cast of characters. The Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, that's the tool you use to go after the broker and the legal handler for the basic crimes of cheating and forgery. The Prevention of Corruption Act? Well, that one's designed specifically to target that corrupt insider. And the Benami Transactions Act is a really powerful law for going after the financiers by hitting them where it hurts, uncovering the true illegal ownership of the properties they're trying to hide.
So the key takeaway here is that you need a very specific mindset to tackle this. It's not about chasing down rumors. It is about methodically mapping the entire process. That means you have to catalog the exact document each person touches, the precise office checkpoint they bypass, and then follow that date-stamped paper trail of every single permission and registration.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful thought. When you see the same type of fraud, with the same methods, the same shortcuts, repeating itself over and over and over again, you're not looking at a series of accidents. You're looking at an institution. And the real question then becomes, how do you dismantle it?